All right, we are live. Let's do it live, Corey. Let's do it live. All right, we're going to talk some Florida Gators recruiting today. I am Keith Niebuhr with Gators Online, and that is Corey Bender, also with Gators Online. And it's been a busy couple of weeks at the Swamp behind me. You know, just a couple of weeks ago, Florida hosted Tennessee, and you're thinking, boy, that visitors list is outstanding. That's going to be the weekend that everybody focuses on. And sure enough, the next weekend against Charlotte, Florida had, quite frankly, maybe even a more impressive visitors list when you consider the top end talent, multiple 5 stars committed to other schools. Some other commitments of other schools showed up, and it ended up being a significant weekend. So today, you know, we just did a show yesterday, Corey, on 3 flip targets for the Gators, but today we're going to get a little bit more in depth on those 3 and then all the flip candidates out there, and then we'll take people's questions and all that. But, you know, Corey, all eyes right now are on Jeremiah Smith, the 5-star Ohio State receiver committee. He's the #1 recruit in the country. He visited Florida this past weekend, but he might not even be the most interesting Florida flip candidate right now. It might be DeAndre Robinson of Orlando Jones, 4-star defensive lineman, committed to Texas over Florida in July. People in Gainesville thought he was going to Gator country, thought he was Florida bound, and ended up picking the Longhorns in a close battle. But we didn't hear about him for a while, Corey. And then he showed up at the game the other day, and now all hell is broken loose, I guess. We've reported through sourcing that Texas really was unaware of that visit. He was kind of surprised by it. And Saturday night, he told us that, you know, DeAndre Robinson, hey, I'll probably be back, or I will be back at Florida for another game this year. Now, this morning, he tweeted out a hook'em out on X, the app formerly known as Twitter. And he also told me in a direct message, hey, I don't know if I'm going to visit Florida again or not. So clearly he's had some talks with Texas. But Corey, what can you tell us about this recruitment? Florida wasn't getting a lot of buzz with DeAndre Robinson, but apparently behind the scenes was working him pretty hard the whole time.
Yeah, it was really close the first time around, Keith. You know, Florida was kind of considered the favorite for a while until about 2 months before his decision. Texas really gained ground. And I think that first time around, obviously, Florida was his dream school growing up. I know a lot of people hear that, but it was obvious speaking to him that Florida did have a special place in his heart throughout his life. So, you know, Texas came calling. It was very close, but Florida never backed off, and that made an impression on Robinson and obviously those closest to him. So Florida's still in this. Obviously, the biggest key is getting him back on campus for another visit. He already took his OV, so that's out of the question now. But good thing for Florida, you know, proximity is in their favor. You know, it's not a far drive from Orlando to Gainesville. So they have some good home games coming up. And I know right now he's unsure about visiting, but I think, especially when you look at Florida State, even if you're not even committed to any of those schools, that's a big rivalry game. That's one date I'm definitely still keeping an eye on for him as far as returning.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Corey, Saturday night and Sunday and Monday, I thought, boy, I don't know, man. I mean, he didn't tell Texas about this visit. Again, we're speaking about 4-star defensive lineman DeAndre Robinson of Orlando Jones. He didn't tell Texas he was visiting Florida. Apparently, they probably, you know, from what we're told, they weren't thrilled about that. And who would be, right? I mean, if you put all this time and effort into recruiting somebody and then they show up at another school without telling you. Now, I think the difference with him and Jared Gibson, the Texas running back commit, who was at the game as well on Saturday night at Florida. 1, he's from Gainesville. And 2, he had apparently been keeping them in the loop. Hey, it's our off week at IMG Academy. I'm going to be at the Florida game. Okay. So they weren't blindsided by that. So Saturday, Sunday, Monday, I'm thinking, okay, boy, I'm feeling Florida with DeAndre Robinson. But then this morning, you know, he's got the hook'em tweets and the, saying he doesn't know whether he will be back in Gainesville or not. Now, is that him reaffirming his pledge to Texas, so to speak, or is that him kind of covering his tracks a little bit? And he's, you know, and I feel bad for him in a way because, you know, that last week, Corey, when leading up to his commitment to Florida, I was talking to him every day, and he was stressed. You could tell. I mean, it was Texas all the way, but Florida was pushing and making it hard for him. And you know, then he commits, and you feel like, okay, I've got all that behind me now. And now it looks like it's reappeared. And you know, obviously, Corey, Florida needs defensive linemen. They've got 1 true defensive lineman committed right now. That's Nasir Johnson. I believe he was at the game the other day on Saturday as well. But with Mekhi Burroughs' decommitment recently, the 3-star defensive tackle, nose guard, you know, he's 390 pounds, from Georgia, he decommitted from Florida earlier this month. You know, that means that Florida's got a lot more pressure now. Pressure is the word, but look, more sense of urgency. Florida can't just sign one defensive lineman. Yes, they're recruiting LJ McCray, the on-3 5-star from Daytona Beach mainland, but they really wanted 3 guys. Now they have 1 true defensive lineman in the class. So Kendall Jackson could be a defensive lineman, but he also can play edge. He says he's getting recruited more for the edge position, what they call the F. Then you have Corey Amaris Williams, who's listed as a defensive lineman, but he has said they've recruited me to play the edge position as well. So 1 true defensive lineman. They really need DeAndre Robinson now more than they ever have needed him. These next few weeks and few months are going to be fascinating. Does he return? Does Florida continue to gain traction with him? Does Texas get him back on campus? As of right now, I don't know which way this is going to go, Corey, but I'll tell you what, I think Florida's got a shot.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think after talking to him, Keith, after you interviewed him, listening to that audio, it was pretty eye-opening just knowing, like, wow, Florida is in this more than we definitely thought. And definitely kind of going back to when you said we tweet out the Hook'em stuff this morning, I think it's kind of covering your own tracks. Plus, you're kind of locked in. And like you mentioned at the top of it, Texas was caught off guard by the visit. And, obviously those are kind of awkward conversations to have after. It's not like something you want to talk about after you visit another school. So I think Florida, I think the biggest thing is just getting him back on campus. But, I think sitting on the field after too, he was on the field after the game was over with the coaching staff. He was looking at the swamp and his family was taking it all in too. And I'm sure some of that nostalgia kind of hit in with them as far as, this is a school I loved growing up. And, it's a long way to signing day. And obviously if he returns to Austin for another visit, that's going to be key too, because usually you get out there and it's like, hey, this is why I committed in the first place. Hey, I'm going to shut it down. So I think these next few visits, whether it's to Austin or Gainesville, are going to be key in determining where this recruitment ultimately ends.
And Corey, I should point out, I haven't got to this yet. Monday night, Texas offered another defensive lineman in Florida in the 2024 class. I believe his name's Dimitri Nicholas from South Florida, committed to Auburn. And boy, if you're Auburn, you got Texas trying to poach some of your commits now. So was that an offer, hey, we really love this guy? Was that an offer of, well, gosh, if we're Texas, we could lose DeAndre Robinson to Florida. Now we got to cover our own backside.
The timing was definitely interesting.
Boy, it was eye-opening, wasn't it? And, and poor old Auburn gets kind of caught in the middle of this. But, it all happened at once, kind of a confluence of events. DeAndre Robinson, we're going to try to continually get up with him each week. The one thing about him, Corey, when he didn't pick Florida, you and I both heard from Florida, not people at the University of Florida, but fan types. Oh, this guy's not a good kid. He probably doesn't, he wasn't honest with Florida. But the truth is, you and I have had nothing but great experiences with him. He's just, sometimes these recruitments get tricky and get confusing to these young guys. So
very respectful kid, man. I have nothing but great things to say about him.
Honestly, my favorite recruit maybe in this class, whether he goes to Texas or Florida. But all right, before we get going, if you like what we're doing with the Gators Online YouTube channel, as Scooter Man says, thank you, Scooter Man, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and leave a comment. Please get these comments rolling, and these shows are for you. This is a live show. If you've got recruiting questions, ask them. Otherwise, we're just going to keep going and going and going on flip targets. But, hey, we'd love to take your questions. So, please jump in. Now, a lot of the information we're talking about, a lot of this stuff today, our subscribers at Gators Online got yesterday. So look, Corey, we gotta play pitchman here too. $1 right now gets you 1 month at GatorsOnline.com. Again, 1 month for $1. That gets your foot in the door for all the great recruiting intel, recruiting scoop, recruiting insight, and then also team insight and team intel and overall team coverage. Plus, we've got a really great and growing message board community right now. All right, but Corey, so that's enough on DeAndre Robinson. We're going to give that poor kid a little bit of a breather here, but God, that was a kind of a nice little surprise if you're a Florida fan that he showed up. But the bigger surprise was that Charles Lester showed up. Now, this is a 5-star defensive back, cornerback from Venice, Florida, a guy that, quite frankly, Florida was involved with him for a long time. And then as his commitment date approached in July, you heard nothing about Florida. It was all Florida State, some Colorado. Many of you may recall that he took a late visit to Colorado, and you're thinking, is Deion going to pull another one on a fast one on FSU? But he ended up committing to FSU. Again, we heard nothing about Florida for months and months and months. Corey, I'm out in front of the stadium the other day before the game, and I turn around and I see this guy, and it looks familiar, and I look down at his name tag, and it says Charles Lester. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Okay, we thought And sources told us it wouldn't be a big recruiting weekend for Florida. It ended up being a massive recruiting win. So we got to get our line of communication a little bit. I mean, we got to work on that. That's another story for another day. But obviously, some of these guys in Florida's defense, look, you don't want the whole world to know, especially FSU, that you're bringing in Charles Lester for a visit. We get all that. Believe me, I'm kind of pulling their chain a little bit. But Charles Lester, Corey, again, a guy that doesn't love doing interviews, but after the game gave a great interview, a fantastic interview in it. And I came away thinking, and you did too, Florida might have a shot here. Now, again, uphill battle. He's committed to FSU. FSU's winning. He grew up an FSU fan. He's got a lot of, ties, a lot of good bonds with that staff up there. But he showed up at Florida wearing a Florida jersey. And then afterward, he said, hey, man, I'm coming back once, maybe twice for games. And yeah, I'm officially visiting. So, Corey, what do we think? And what do you know from the Florida side about the recruitment of FSU 5-star cornerback commit Charles Lester?
Yeah, so Keith, he's visited about a handful of times. The last visit before last weekend was back in January. So like you said, Florida faded out of the picture. Jamar Chaney, when he left for Western Kentucky, he was a primary source of communication for him as well. So you look at that, how Florida faded out of the picture, you would think, why is Florida even going to keep recruiting this kid? It's an uphill battle. But that, from what I talked to people close to the situation, that's what made an impression on Lester and his family, is that Florida just never gave up. Obviously the Corey Raymond effect is huge with him too, knowing the possibilities of having a coach like that. But Florida's commitment to his recruitment and not backing off played a major impression on them. But also from the Florida side, from talking to a few sources too, is that they're optimistic. They know they're back in the picture, but they know there's a lot of work to be done as well. So I think, like you said, Keith, it's not often when you have a 5-star kid, especially committed also, or want to kind of be, kind of give all the details with his recruitment and kind of leave you saying, wow, I think this other school might have a shot. It's definitely going to be an uphill battle, but the fact that Florida might get 2, possibly 3 more visits, including an OV right before signing day, that's all you need. I mean, it kind of goes back to Kamari Wilson too a few cycles ago. Florida was kind of off the radar with him. They got a last-second OV, and next thing you know, he was in Florida's class. So I definitely like where FSU stands more as of today. It's probably too early to tell, but Florida's the only other school he's communicating with, and if you're Florida, you just have to be pleased with where you're sitting, this far out.
Yeah, keep getting them on campus, see what happens, hope for the best. We know that Florida's got a big need at cornerback. I think right now Florida has 2 cornerbacks committed, Wardell Mack, the 4-star out of Louisiana. But, remember now, Florida State's recruiting him. LSU's still recruiting him. Texas is still recruiting him. So Wardell Mack's recruitment, although he seems solid to Florida, he's still going to take visits. And so you have to be leery of that. And then the fact he's in the greater New Orleans area. I mean, if LSU comes in hard late, things can happen. You got to be prepared, obviously. What was it? Florida's athletic director, Jeremy Foley, said, you always got to have a list just in case your head coach quits, basically. You always got to have a list. You always got to be prepared. So Florida being prepared here, also recruiting 4-star cornerback Zay Mincy out of Daytona Beach, Mainland. Florida, Miami, Alabama battle. Florida still trying to flip Jameer Grimsley, the Alabama commit from Tampa Catholic. But, he's telling people close to him, hey, I'm solid to Alabama, although we expect him to be at a Florida game real soon. So there's a lot of irons in the fire, so to speak. You just really need one more cornerback and you probably be okay. So Corey Raymond and Austin Armstrong and Billy Napier are working a lot of different angles here. But Charles Lester's an interesting one. It absolutely is. And so Kev says, hey, with all the theatrics we saw with Lester's commitment when he committed to FSU, doesn't he seem pretty locked in? It'd be weird if he decommitted now. I think Corey kind of explained that. Yeah, things change over time. Look, kids fall in and out of love with schools, Corey, but so do coaching staffs. We don't know what's going on in Tallahassee right now. Maybe they think they're flipping somebody else and they like that guy better than this. You just don't really know. All we know is they say follow the visits for a reason. He went to Florida once. If he never goes again, it probably didn't mean much. If he continues to show up, there's a chance it's going to mean something, but we will see. All right, let's get to a few of your questions here. Again, I'm Keith Niebuhr with Gators Online. That is Corey Bender. I almost called you Corey Raymond of Gators Online, but Corey Bender of Gators Online. And
I wish I had that scouting ability like Corey.
Corey, you're a young guy. How old are you?
I'll be turning 33 here in a month.
All right, so you're a young guy. There's a famous book out there by the sports writer Mitch Albom called Tuesdays with Maury. You familiar with that book? Tuesdays with Maury?
Not the, but he was with Detroit Free Press too,
he
right?
Was, and before that he worked.
I know him, but I don't know.
Knows him, the older people, because he actually worked at the Fort Lauderdale paper, the Sun Sentinel. But I thought about calling this segment, his book was Tuesdays with Maury. I thought about calling this Tuesdays with Corey, but then I remembered that the book about Maury is about Maury dying, and I thought that would be a little too morbid for you. Yeah, I don't want to.
I agree on that one.
Let's get to some more of your questions. Scooter wants to know, and Scooter's all over the board today, so thanks for your questions. Who could be the next commit in the 2025 class? Well, Corey, you accurately predicted the first commit in 2025, four-star running back Waltez Clark of Tampa Plant. Before we get to this question, Corey, let me point out, Waltez Clark did not play this past Friday night in Tampa Plant's route of Tampa Chamberlain because he's hurt. He's nursing an ankle injury. They wanted to get him ready for the district competition that's coming up. So he is fine. You're going to look at Waltez Clark's statistics for the year, and you're going to think, no, that's not that great. He's been a little banged up. Should be good to go this week. All right, Corey, next commit in the 2025 class. Just give me a couple of possibilities.
Yeah, I think right now, one guy that comes to mind for me is Javon Boggs, a receiver out of Cocoa. Florida and Ohio State are very close right there. He's going to Ohio State next month, so that could be like kind of almost like a finish line for him, kind of comparing those two visits. He's one I'm keeping an eye on. One kid that I'm definitely keeping an eye on now is Ryan Montgomery, the quarterback out of Findlay, Ohio. As we reported, in the last 24 hours, he's looking to come back here in the next month and a half or so. I believe it's the Arkansas game. They're looking to come back. That would be a second in-season visit. Jalen Wiggins, another kid out of Tallahassee Rickards, an elite kid along the D-line. Those are three guys you can kind of mention right now. And so we've been speaking on flip targets the past 20 minutes. Another one's Malik Autry, an Auburn commit. A kid out of Alabama. The Alabama schools are right there. Obviously, he's committed to the Tigers, but Florida's the school pushing the hardest to flip him. He's visited 3 times this year, so that's another kid to keep an eye on. Hey, Keith, I think you're muted right now.
Yeah, I'm muted. Yeah, sorry. Actually, I shouldn't apologize. You guys should be thanking me for being muted. But Malik Autry, having been in that region, he's committed to Auburn, but Georgia's working on him too. I'm just a little leery of that one. I keep hearing that he's probably not solid. I'll believe it when I see it. But in the 2025 Corey, I'm starting to get the feeling that Ryan Montgomery is going to jump on board. I could be reading that wrong. You're the one talking to all the sources, but it sure sounds like it.
Sounds like Florida and South Carolina right now. And the thing is, he's going to go to South Carolina for the Florida game. So it's that rare opportunity to go to watch Florida live 3 times this year. And I think that can be key.
All right, Gator Swag says, what are the chances Florida finishes with the number 1 class in 2024? Well, I don't think they have any chance in heck if they don't land Jeremiah Smith. They got to flip Jeremiah Smith for starters. Then you'd have to also get LJ McCray. You'd probably have to flip Charles Lester from Florida State. And then Zay Mincy, you'd probably have to. I mean, look, I don't like their chances, what I'm saying. Too many things would have to happen. Look, there's a chance. I think Florida's probably going to go in the other direction. And I don't mean that in a bad look. I'm not saying that they're going to lose guys or anything like that. I'm just saying there's a lot of teams still have commitments to gain. My guess is Florida probably finishes, Corey, in that 5 to 7 range, or I'll say 4 to 6 range, which I think is really, really good. I like them with LJ McCray. I think as of today, they're probably the best position there. That could change. Ask me tomorrow. Jeremiah Smith, the 5-star receiver, that's going to be a tough flip. Charles Foster, the 5-star cornerback, that's going to be a tough flip, but they'll probably flip somebody. And if they can land LJ McCray too, I think that gets them solidly in the top 5. So I'm going to say 4 to 6 is where I have them finishing. Corey, what do you think?
Yeah, I think right around there, Keith. I think 4 to 6. And the thing is, too, is a lot of it doesn't even have to do with Florida. It happens. It could be a USC. It could be another school that gets a kid and they go over Florida. So when people say, hey, Florida dropped their rankings, it's not necessarily anything Florida did. It really has to do with these other schools, too. But right now, about 3 to 6 right now. And, Jeremiah Smith, that's going to be extremely tough. I'm just being honest about that. Florida's getting visits and they're still on the radar. But if I'm a betting man, I would stick with Ohio State. I agree with Keith on LJ McCray. I think, obviously, that could push Florida class up into this number 2 or 3 range. But the thing that's very challenging right now is the remaining Florida targets are all priority kids. It's not, a high 3-star kid that Florida's going to get probably. They're battling the national powers for elite 5-star and high 4-star kids. So even like a Zay Mincy, he's not announcing until January. So I think Florida's best positioned right now, but right now it's too early to tell. But 3 to 6 is likely.
Hey, if Florida lands a couple other guys, they may not even need Zay Mincy. You just never know. All right, so let's get to this one question real quick, and then there's a guy saying I'm too negative, so I want to address him. But we're going to get to G real quick. Trey says, how are we looking on the offensive line? 4 commitments, obviously. The 2 big ones being 4-star Marcus Maskell and 4-star Fletcher Westfall. Fletcher Westfall, natural tackle. I think Maskell could probably play guard or tackle. Then they've got two developmental guys, Portajean from Germany and Mike Williams from Baltimore. They're bringing in Jordan Seaton, who On Three has as a 5-star. He's coming in for an official visit soon. And they're working on some other guys too. Favor Edwin, 4-star, 3-star.
Your pronunciation is on point. I was about from your German roots right there.
Well, Favor Edwin from McDonough Eagles Landing Christian, a school, by the way, that's produced a lot of good players through the years. Sent guys to Notre Dame, sent guys to other schools throughout the SEC. Guys made the NFL from that school. But a lot of work to be done there. Jordan Seaton's kind of interesting. We think Alabama's probably the team to beat right now. But we'll see how his official visit to Florida goes. Corey G. Foe says, why is the sky always falling with Keith? Well, first of all, look at me, okay? I mean, I've had a rough life here, okay, man? There's see the clouds above me there? They follow me everywhere. So the sky is always falling.
A lot of bad golf outings can
affect my God. You know that. But no, obviously Florida has more DTs on its roster, defensive tackles. I get that, but Florida needs to be at the point where they're reloading every cycle on every recruiting class, every cycle reload, okay? And so I don't feel like you want to have a cycle where you don't land elite defensive linemen, and not just one, but 2 or 3. So that's my whole theory there. All right, Corey, here's an interesting one. Is Jarrett Gibson out of reach for Florida? A Texas running back commit from Gainesville High, playing at Bradenton IMG. He's from Gainesville, went to Gainesville High, now at IMG. And, he committed to Texas over the summer, was once committed to Florida when Billy Napier and his crew got there, decommitted not too many months after that. And now Florida's really ramped it up, trying to get him back on board. He's been there 2 straight weeks, but Corey, he had an off week last week. I mean, this one's still really, he's saying Florida's got a shot, but we're not really getting any Florida vibes yet, I don't think.
Yeah, I think right now, I mean, we mentioned obviously DeAndre Robinson. I think he's the most likely flip out of the Texas kids. With Jarrett Gibson, and the thing I think a lot of people have to kind of remember too, he's from Gainesville. So when he visited for the Orange and Blue game, he was coming back home for Easter. So he's obviously right up the street. And it was the same thing for last week. He was on a bye week. Tennessee game, he wasn't. So that was a big thing to get him on campus. Florida would love to add a high-quality second running back in this class, and Gibson's near the top of that wish list.
Yeah.
I think he sticks with Texas right now. Never say never to the dream school, the hometown school.
Yeah.
If Florida keeps playing well, though, I know one thing he mentioned at the top of the year was, Florida's ability to run the ball, how dedicated they are to that 2-headed attack they have. That's something that he really likes. So I think right now he's fairly quiet, doesn't really reveal too much. I have him sticking with Texas, but if he was to flip, you would probably have to put Florida as that 2 school if he was.
Gator Swag, real quick, on a scale of 1 to 10, what are the chances Florida lands 5 5-stars? Not very good. That's hard. I mean, there's just too many battles. You got 2 committed right now. 2 5-stars in the On Three industry rankings: quarterback DJ Lagway, safety Xavier Phil Samita, both out of Texas. I mean, I put it at 1. I mean, look, that's not discounting Florida. That's just a massive challenge. All right.
For any school.
Yeah, exactly. Same person's asking, can Florida land Jeremiah Smith from Ohio State? Well, we talked about that earlier. Yes, they can, but it's going to be hard. I mean, he keeps giving Florida good looks. He keeps saying all the right things after every visit. But if you go back and look, he also says all the right things after he visits Florida State. He also says all the right things after he visits Miami. Ohio State's the one constant in his recruitment. He's very close with Brian Hartline, the offensive coordinator, and also receivers guru up there. It's going to be difficult. If Florida continues to play like it has, though, maybe. And then there's also we don't even talk about it much, Corey, the NIL factor. I mean, he's going to get rich, okay? He's the number 1 overall recruit in the country. So if anybody that wants him is going to have to really – I mean, if you're going to separate through NIL, it's going to be big, okay?
I think his last performance when he went off for 300 yards, that boosted his NIL. If you're hoping to compete with an NIL department, that just made it even more difficult.
Yeah, he's probably worth every penny. And here's the thing. He is a culture fit in Gainesville, and he's probably a culture fit in these other schools too, because he's a quiet kid. He's a humble kid, no problems at all, team player, supports his teammates, does interviews, polite, respectful, good parents. And he's the best player in the country. I mean, this guy is everything you want out of a kid. So he's going to earn that NIL money for all the off-the-field stuff because he's so damn likable, Corey. He really is.
Where would you put him at, Keith? You've seen a lot of receivers over the years. Where would you place him in, like, Florida?
He's the best high school receiver I've seen. The guys in that league, there ain't many. I never saw AJ Green. I know people bring up Julio Jones, but the one that the people in Georgia and Alabama and the Carolinas mentioned is AJ Green.
Yeah, that's the one I've heard the most.
He was the freak of all freaks in high school. Now, obviously, Julio Jones, can't deny what he did in college and the NFL, but in high school, it was AJ Green. I think that's the one he compares most to. Next question here, Ron Roberts says, any word with Dallas Wilson? I've not caught up with him this week. I could go to his school anytime, just giving him a little space. That's the 4-star, 5-star, depending upon which recruiting site is ranking him, receiver at Tampa Bay Tech. He's committed to Oregon 2025. Should point that out. Junior Oregon commit, Tampa Bay Tech. He was at the game the other day. I talked to him before the game outside the stadium. He was excited to see Florida play. By the way, Corey, you want to talk about an AJ Green body? That's Dallas Wilson. He's built somewhat like Jeremiah Smith in height, just not as wide. But outstanding prospect. Florida's making some moves with him, offered him a few months ago. They've also offered his quarterback, 2026 recruit Logan Rogers at Tampa Bay Tech. They're also recruiting a receiver teammate of his at Tampa Bay Tech in the 2025 class. Doesn't have an offer yet, Santonio Isaac. So Florida's trying to make some inroads at Tampa Bay Tech. Nothing yet that makes me think he's going to flip, but he's liking Florida. He just wants to visit a lot of schools. I think that's going to be one we won't know much for a while, Corey. All right, next question. And I'll leave this one to you, Corey. I'll give you the hard ones here. Do we think Chauncey Bowens is back in play after UGA? Georgia has the number 1 and number 9 running backs out in front of him. I don't know that they're in front of them, but point well taken. Georgia's got 3 running backs committed. Chauncey Bowens, one-time Gators commit, plays at Palm Beach Gardens. Benjamin for former Gator Eric Kresser, who's the head coach there. Corey, I'm not hearing any buzz about him at all.
Mm-hmm. In the way it ended too, it wasn't like a sour ending, but it was just kind of the drama leading up to UGA. Then he swiped everything Florida out of his bio, and it was just a weird ending to it all. I mean, I'm sure if he called Florida and he wanted in, I'm sure there'd be discussions about that, but I haven't heard his name in months since he flipped. It's been all Georgia since then. He's been heavily recruiting for the Dogs as well. But there are a few other running backs they're trying to get, but he's one I haven't heard much about at all.
Yeah, obviously trying to flip Jarrett Gibson, the Texas running back commit, but also working on I get the hiccups now, of course. Trying to flip Jaden Baugh, Arkansas running back commit from Decatur, Georgia, which is in the perimeter, so in Atlanta. So a lot of irons in the fire there as well. And they're still recruiting, still evaluating other guys. Corey is sending me a text here. Okay. All right. Just making sure. Next up. Can we recruit a 5-star special teams coach? Next question. How loaded is the 2025 class in the state of Florida? Lucas checking in. Lucas, my man, what's going on, brother? Corey, it looks really good. There's a lot of Florida offers out for 2025. You mentioned one of them is Jalen Wiggins. I always want to call him Jalen Rivers, but Jalen Wiggins, the D lineman from Tallahassee. You've got the edge guy out in the Panhandle. You've got all these kids in the Tampa Bay area. Dallas Wilson, we just mentioned, the receiver at Tampa Bay.
Tampa's a great 25 class.
Yeah. Dallas Golden, the safety at Berkeley Prep. Florida loves him, although I think maybe Notre Dame's trending a little bit right now. Elijah Melendez, right? I always pronounce is it Melendez?
Melendez. I think you're right.
The great linebacker, Kissimmee Osceola. You've got the kids at Jacksonville Mandarin that are very good, including Hilton Drake Stubbs, the safety, Tramel Jones, the quarterback, Myron Charles, the defensive lineman down in Port Charlotte, Armando Blunt, who just committed to Miami, the defensive lineman from Miami.
And then probably DJ Pickett. I mean,
DJ Pickett. Yeah, I forgot about the best one. That tells you how smart I am. DJ Pickett, 5-star defensive back / receiver core. You know his situation real well from Zephyr Hills. And hey, look, while we're talking about loaded 2025 or how loaded the 2025 is, let's get some intel on DJ Pickett, Corey. Maybe the best player in the state for next year. Certainly, I've got a phone call here. I got to decline that. And so DJ Pickett, what can you tell us about his recruitment? Cornerback, receiver, the guy can do everything. He's tall and lanky. He was the star of Florida 7-on-7 camp this summer. How deep is Florida in it with him? He's been to a few recent games at the Swamp.
Yeah, so Florida has received the most visits to this point. So they always say attractive visits. So Florida's right up there. And I know his father and his mother have mentioned kind of, hey, if you play at home, everyone can come see you play. So I think in any parent's dream, they love to come watch their kid play. But, that's not a deciding factor. There has been a lot of buzz with these out-of-state schools too. I like Florida in that top 3 range. I think Georgia, Michigan, and Florida are probably the 3 schools. Miami's right there as well. You know, he has some family ties to that school. His uncle played at Miami, and you know, people say his dad's a Miami fan too. So there's a lot of schools still in the mix. Oregon's kind of a dark horse if he does go out of state, but I think right now, I think he's just sitting back. He's enjoying the process. He's in no hurry at all.
Have heard some buzz that he may want to leave the state. Now, again, you're much closer to his situation. I'm hearing that from other people.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to some more questions. Great question, Lucas. We always appreciate it. He's one of our great subscribers. By the way, right now at Gators Online, I got to sell you a card. Now, $1 1 month. $1 1 month. Get you in the door. Great recruiting insight, great recruiting intel, a ton of content every day. We cover the team better than anyone. We've got the best message board community in the market, maybe one of the best message board communities in the country, and it's growing. It's getting better. Florida is hot right now, and so is the site. So go check that out. If you like what we're doing here, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and keep leaving these comments. All right, we're going to try to get to some more of your questions here. All right, Neil says, does the staff want to add a 4th receiver? Yeah, if it's an elite guy. So they're working on some guys, obviously. Jeremiah Smith, right? That's one guy. They were recruiting another kid out of Georgia, but Cam McKell, but I think both parties sort of went in another direction there. Niebuhr, 4-star receiver from Moultrie, Georgia, Colquitt County. God, Gator fans, you're not going to like this reference. I know I'm getting called out for being too negative earlier. Moultrie, Georgia, I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe that is Ray Goff's hometown. My memory's right. Moultrie, Georgia. Also, Dan Reeves' hometown, former Denver Broncos head coach, Dan Reeves. But Niebuhr, 4-star receiver, slot guy, little guy, decommitted from Georgia this week. A lot of Florida State buzz, a lot of Auburn buzz. He'll be at Auburn this weekend. Some Miami buzz. Miami was at his school yesterday, but Florida still continues to sniff around there. They would like to add another receiver, Corey, if it's an elite guy, right?
100%. And then obviously one other guy who you're obviously really caught with too is TJ Moore at Tampa Catholic. So I think just depending on the pass catcher, you know, there's certain guys out there that are still recruiting that they would love to have in the class, but, you know, they're happy with what they have, but they're also, you know, being selected down the stretch, and understandably so, like TJ Moore. And like you said, Keith, Cam McKell, we walked away from that. Kind of understand. I think there's both of them move on from that. But I think right now there's 3 major targets right now: TJ Moore, Jeremiah Smith. I mean, those are the 2 that come to mind right now. And yeah, it's kind of a wait and see game. I don't think we're going to figure out if they're going to have a 4th receiver for several months now. It's going to take a while to kind of figure that out.
Yeah, and people have to remember too, there could be, well, first of all, the staff is scouring the country looking for developmental guys that are rising. Look, there are kids out there that were okay in the spring and are great now. They're still growing. I mean, they're 15, 16, 17 years old. Well, if they're a senior, you'd hope they're 16, 17, 18 in that range. So they're still making big strides, some of these guys. Yeah. And by the way, that works both ways. Some of the kids that are 4 and 5 stars are doing this or this even. And so there are kids doing this. So the Florida staff is looking over game tape from all across the country. And don't forget this too. You've got the JUCOs. There are going to be guys emerging in the junior college ranks. In fact, Florida just offered a defensive lineman. What's his name, Corey? Brian Taylor,
yeah. Brian Taylor out of
Blinn.
And then they have the Laquan Robinson too, the safety.
That's right. Laquan Robinson is from Greenville, Alabama, just south of Montgomery. Brian Taylor plays at Blinn Community College in Texas, or Blinn College. I don't even know what the name of it is now, but the same school that Cam Newton went to after he left Florida. So they're still looking there too. There could be a receiver emerge. There's been plenty of elite receivers come out of the JUCO ranks. The JUCO season's only, 4 or 5 games in too. So guys are going to emerge. More guys are going to emerge. You may find a better guy in November than guys you have committed now. That's just the way it goes. So yes, if Florida can get an elite guy, absolutely. Neo says, does the portal hurt recruiting? That's kind of I'm not taking a shot at you. That's a little bit of a vague, in what way I would say. I don't think it, everybody's dealt with the same hand, right? You're basically, used to be you had to build a team just through recruiting. Now you can build it through recruiting and through the portal. You can have these 2 things going on at the same time. And some schools are doing a lot better of it than others. And, we gave Florida a little bit of grief, people did for not maybe hitting a quote unquote home run in the portal. But if you look at the lineup for Florida, the roster, there are significant difference makers, or I don't want to say difference makers, significant contributors on the team right now who came via the portal. Micah Mazzulla, I can never pronounce his last name. The starting offensive lineman from Baylor, Cam Jackson, who I believe Corey came from Memphis, the defensive lineman. RJ Moten from Michigan, the safety. So yes, they are big contributors. It's not like Florida struck out in the portal, done pretty well. Somebody asking about DJ Pickett, somebody making fun of Billy's play calling. All right, Lucas, another question. How do we look for Teddy Foster's teammate? Can't remember his name. Chris McCorkle is his name.
Come on, Lucas.
Yeah, 3-star 2025 cornerback. Again, we don't give out a lot of 4 stars until they get to their senior year. They got to earn it. And Chris McCorkle, Corey, what can you tell us about his recruitment and also, his ability, his frame, and all that stuff?
Yeah, it's funny. So him and Foster, when you look at him, they walked out of the stadium for the Tennessee game. I'm sorry, and very similar body type, long, rangy, that prototypical size and length that once they fill out and they get stronger, they're going to be good looking prospects, bigger DBs. But as far as recruiting, Florida's out top right now. They have a pretty strong lead. There's other Power 5 schools still evaluating him. More offers are going to be coming his way, but all eyes are on Florida right now. I think it's going to depend on where Florida sits in the class. There's a lot of big time guys that are going after the 25 class. It's still very early. I don't think there's really necessarily a rush with recruiting him, but all eyes are on Florida right now. And I think one thing is big too is Corey Raymond's evaluated him twice in person. And that shows him coming back a second time. Obviously he's there for Teddy Foster too, but obviously he sees a lot of traits that he likes in McCorkle. So I think all eyes are on Florida right now. It's kind of more of a wait and see right now.
Yeah, I think McCorkle was actually Chris McCorkle. We're talking about 3-star 2025 cornerback from Sarasota Cardinal Mooney, teammate of Teddy Foster, as Corey said. Actually, his defensive coordinator is a guy named John Haskins, who used to be basically the head of Florida's recruiting operation under Will Muschamp, and people can knock Muschamp. But they did recruit pretty well, especially on the defensive side of the ball. So this guy knows talent. And so, I will say this. I think Chris McCorkle was slightly injured when Corey Raymond was at his game, probably didn't get the best look. And, he told us after he visited Florida a couple weeks ago that he was really feeling Florida. The thought of committing had crossed his mind, and he wanted to talk to Corey Raymond about it, and then nothing happened. So we don't know. I haven't dug back into that one. It very well could be a situation where Florida just said, hey, be patient, take your time, because both sides really need to be patient. Is it a no-brainer take? Is it, you just never know. Again, we're kind of speculating on something that we don't really know what happened here, but, not a bad a young target, not a bad young prospect. And I think if all works out, he'd love to be at Florida. So we'll just have to see where he sits on Florida's board moving forward. Corey, some other flip candidates. Let's see. We talked about Jarrett Gibson. We've talked at length about Jeremiah Smith.
We could dig at Jameer Grimsley. I mean,
we've got Jameer Grimsley now. Jameer Grimsley, yeah, now that's a big one because we know Florida loves him. And so who's Jameer Grimsley? 4-star cornerback at Tampa Catholic. He's been hurt most of the season. Corey, I think you went to watch him play, and he got banged up, and he hadn't really played much since then. But committed to Alabama. Did not go to the Florida-Tennessee game. And I think that was disappointing for Florida because Bama happened to play at USF that same day. So that really kind of stung Florida. Not stung, but, you'd want that guy. You'd want that guy to be at your game, right?
It was bad timing.
Bad timing. Right now, behind the scenes, he's telling people it's Bama. It's all Bama. But he's still listening to Florida. We know his family likes Florida a lot. Proximity to home would be significant. His dad, by the way, played, I believe, at UCF, but loves the Gators, so that doesn't hurt. So somebody we're going to keep watching. And Corey, he's going to be visiting Florida soon.
Yeah. So, the plan right now, it's now 100% locked in, but more than likely he'll be back in Gainesville on November 4th for the Arkansas game. And that's something he's been discussing for a few weeks now, too. I know when I talked to him, he said the next home game, and thank God I had a follow-up question. I said to him at the time, I said, McNeese State. He said, no, the Arkansas. So I'm like, okay, cool. That one's far out. But that's still the plan right now. He's going to hopefully come back for the Arkansas game. And he said all along that he wants to see, growth from Florida, like how the season plays out. He's big on, on-field results. Florida right now, their defense right now, top 5 nationally, number 1 in the SEC. You got to be happy with that. They're playing a lot of freshman DBs. So if you're Florida, you're kind of putting everything, you're kind of backing up everything you've been telling Grimsley, throughout the summer and the spring. So it's kind of a wait and see. He's happy with Alabama. Obviously, that commitment's rock solid, but I hate to say dream school, but it was his favorite school growing up. And I think that's the only other school right now to keep an eye on for him.
Yeah. Excuse me. We're both battling of course, I'm the only one coughing, both battling colds or whatever we have. But yeah, so look, there's a lot of stuff going on with Florida right now. So Corey, the guys that are committed that we're keeping an eye on, the guys that are committed to Florida, I think Wardell Mack is the big one because he's, says he's going to visit FSU. He's the 4-star cornerback, by the way, from Louisiana. We mentioned this earlier. Says he's going to visit FSU. Probably will visit Texas again. Probably will visit LSU again. So that's a guy we're keeping an eye on. Jamonte Waller, we know that Auburn is hot and heavy on him. They think he's going to visit at some point. That's your 4-star edge / inside linebacker, so keep an eye on him. Other schools, Miami and Auburn, still heavily recruiting Amir Jackson, the 4-star tight end from Portal, Georgia, but Russ Callaway, Florida's tight ends coach, visited him 2 weeks ago to watch him play. Apparently, Florida came away really impressed. I think he's a rising star. Plays receiver for his high school team, so he's going to have to learn how to block once he gets to college a little bit. But
that was another good eval by Florida. It was kind of like, they offered him in January before he was unranked. No one really even knew about him. And look at him now, top 10 at the position, I believe.
Yeah, great player. Oh, here we got a question. Let's get to this so I don't have to keep blathering here or whatever. Corey, we ask a lot about 5 stars as fans, but can you talk about the great fit a lot of our recruits will fill? I'm impressed after a 6-win season. Okay, so you're looking for quality in a recruiting class. Quality, quantity, and fit filling needs, basically. So, Corey, just give me a couple guys that you think, you can't go through the whole class, a couple guys that you think are just really good fits with Florida in this class, this 2024 commit list. Florida's got 21 commits, number 3 class.
Yeah, I think one kid that doesn't get mentioned enough is a Darius Hayes. And I know, Keith, you've seen him in person too. As far as kids passing the eye test, he's a kid because he's so quiet. His recruitment's basically shut down. We don't talk about him as much because, everyone wants to know all the recruiting drama. But he's a great fit. I think he's versatile. I think he can play in the edge. He can play linebacker, which he's primarily projected to do. He's one kid I think who's a great fit for Florida. I think Amir Jackson's another one. I think Florida, they're kind of retooling that tight end room, trying to get more athleticism in there. And he's kind of that new age tight end who can really stretch the field. And I think another guy that we'll mention here too that I like Kyan Daniels, a running back coming out of Mississippi. And when I watch his film, he's not your traditional running back who, plays, a ball carrier who plays running back. He plays under center a lot at quarterback too. His running style reminds me a lot of Darren McFadden back in the day at Arkansas, kind of a big, tall back who can kind of really get going. So those are some guys I think from on-field scheme fit who really fit Florida's plans for the future.
Yeah, and while you're talking there, I'm looking at the stats. Here's the Darius Hayes stats. Linebacker at Largo, Florida, just west of Tampa and just north of St. Pete. His team's 4-1. Just this past week, he had 11 tackles and an interception, which he returned for, I think, 28 yards. He now has 59 tackles through 5 games with 1 tackle for loss. Now, he's not rushing. He's not in the backfield. That's not really his role, but he is playing very well. And he did get a rankings bump, a boost in the rankings from On3 just a week ago. So a guy, Darius Hayes, that's doing a lot of good things this season. All right, Brian Korth. We're going to get to a few more questions, and then we're going to let everybody get back to their lives. Brian, you are not late. Who is most likely to commit to Florida next? I got to think about that, Corey. Well, look, if it's LJ McCray, if he's picking Florida, then he could be next because he's saying official visit to FSU the weekend of October 7th. By the way, that's 5-star defensive lineman. Official visit to FSU on October 7th. Birthday's October 18th, and then a commitment sometime soon after that. So keep an eye on LJ McCray. That would be my best guess right now. But again, we don't know for sure he's going to Florida, quite frankly. Georgia very much in it. Miami, FSU obviously in it. Auburn somewhat in it as well. But maybe him. Corey, any thoughts real quick on that one?
Yeah, I think, for a long time, I always was saying Zay Mincy before he announced his commitment date for the All-American Bowl. But I think right now, I think you have to go with LJ McCray. While they're saying a lot of these top kids, they're not really they're looking to take it to the very end. LJ McCray will be done here recruiting here soon. But when you're in a position like Florida, you're a top 5 team nationally, you're battling for these top recruits, you have to learn how to be patient too. You're not going to get these kids overnight with 1 or 2 visits. You got to really earn it and battle it out to the end. And that's kind of the situation Florida's in right now. So it's almost a good problem to have. That's when you know your program's turned the corner in recruiting.
All right, last question, Corey. Of all the flip candidates, I mean, we mentioned a lot. Remember, Florida already does have a flip this cycle recently, and that was T.J. Abrams, the receiver at Fort Myers Dunbar. Of all the flip candidates we've mentioned, who do you think Florida has the best chance of flipping? I still think it's probably DeAndre Robinson, the 4-star defensive lineman committed to Texas, based on everything that he said over the weekend, and then comparing him to all the other flip candidates. I mean, some of them are going to be really difficult. My gut says DeAndre Robinson. Corey, do you think he's probably the guy that Florida has the best chance with, or do you have somebody else in mind?
Yeah, no, definitely him. I was going to say if it wasn't for this past visit, it would have been it'd been a really tough question. It still is a tough question. You know what I mean? It's not nothing's for certain. We like he was telling you, Keith, he might not return to Florida. We'll see if that happens.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Robinson right now is definitely the most likely for sure.
Okay, so let me get back on screen. Somebody's asking, Matthew's asking, we went over possible flips for Florida. Who do we think could leave? Well, we kind of sort of mentioned that too. It's not that we think anybody's going to leave. It's who the guys you keep a track of. Wardell Mack, obviously number one on the list because he's a Louisiana kid and he committed to Florida. So you know if LSU continues to push on a Louisiana kid, they're going to be there at the end. That's just the way it goes. Just like if a kid in Gainesville, like Jared Gibson in Florida continues to push and push and push, you have to keep an eye on Florida. Same thing with Wardell Mack. Jamonte Waller, maybe. We're not hearing too many buzz about a lot of these guys. They mostly seem very locked in. Now, maybe Jeray Hawkins, I don't think he shut it down, the 4-star receiver from Miami.
He did the last visit. He just said he shut it down.
Okay.
But at the same time, though, who knows? It depends. Some of these kids could take a last bit December OV. Remember, he's from the state of West Virginia. You never know. Maybe he takes a late minute OV, sees the Mountaineers, and says, "Hey, home sweet home." You never know.
Well, yeah, and if you're from West Virginia, what other schools are in that region? Well, Penn State. Penn State's one. Ohio State. What if Ohio State needs a slot receiver at the end of the day? Oh, I'll give you one more. And I just talked to him Saturday. Amaris Williams, a 4-star, listed as a defensive lineman, but 4-star edge recruit from Clinton, North Carolina, which I believe is in that Fayetteville, Wilmington area on the more toward the coast of North Carolina. Now he says, hey, I'm talking to Tennessee. They're still coming after me hard. I'm talking to Ohio State. They're still coming after me hard. Says he probably won't take any more visits, but he didn't rule it out. He said he was 75% sure he wouldn't take any more visits. So there you go. There's one to watch right there, Amaris Williams. And here's why also, when he committed to Florida, up until that visit, almost everybody thought he was going to Penn State.
Yeah.
So is he a guy that visits somewhere, falls in love, and then maybe could be swayed? Now, he attended his first Florida game of the season this past weekend. He was able to come down because he played a Thursday night game, and he loved it. He had a great time, decked in Florida gear, but Ohio State's recruiting you. Tennessee's recruiting you. Maybe keep an eye on Ohio State. Look, Tennessee recruits the Carolinas really well. When they're on top, that's their bread and butter. But here's another thing. What's the name of the defensive line coach at Ohio State? I always get his name wrong. Larry Johnson. Yeah. Larry Johnson. I believe he's from North Carolina. Something to keep an eye on, right? So, Amaris Williams, maybe somebody to watch there. All right, let's get to a couple more questions, and then we are going to get out of here. Nature Gator says it has to be helping you with recruiting because of the number of first-year players having an impact so far this season. Yeah, they have to be noticing that. In fact, I'll just say one thing, Corey. Jeremiah Smith, the 5-star receiver, both him and his father told me that watching Andy Jean play the other day was significant, the freshman receiver, also from South Florida. Kids want to know that they're going to, if you're an elite guy, you want to at least know you're going to have a shot. Mm-hmm. You don't want to, what you don't want is to hear that, oh, this guy's kicking tail, but he ain't playing. Well, why isn't he playing?
It's like Jordan Castell. It's like he's excelling on the field, but he's been a major recruiting tool for the last couple of weeks with these kids.
It's not just that a guy's good enough. It's that, did they have trust in him? Now, sometimes, let's be honest, Corey, a true freshman's playing because you ain't got anybody else. You're weak at the position. But recruits aren't thinking about that. They're just seeing that freshman out there playing and doing big things. And Eugene Wilson, Andy Jean, Jordan Castell. So yes. Kelby Collins, I believe, is making an impact out there. So yes. All right. Let's see if there's anything else. I think that is probably it, Corey. We survived. We survived. Gators Online Live Recruiting Edition. All right. One more time for the back row. Hit the like button. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm begging you. We're trying to get this thing to 5,000 by the Georgia game. We're trying to get bigger, better guests. By the way, if you didn't see Fletcher Westphal come on the show Sunday night, he was unbelievable. Great interview.
Keith, I was going to say, too, I have to give you credit for, you said Ray Goff. You said Moultrie. So you're right on that. You're done.
Okay.
Yeah, Moultrie. Yeah.
Okay. Maybe Dan Reeves isn't from Moultrie. He might be from one of those other towns around there. But anyway, so hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, keep leaving comments after the show. I try to go back through and answer as many of them as possible. And obviously go to gatorsonline.com. That's who pays our salaries. That's how we get to do these things. $1 gets you 1 month of great coverage right now. Gatorsonline.com. Everybody have a safe, fun week. We'll do it again throughout the week. We're going to do it again throughout the season. We've got more great programming coming up, and should be a big weekend for Florida, Corey. Every game is significant right now. When you're a young team trying to take steps forward, every game is big. And at Lexington, Kentucky this Saturday is significant. If Florida wins out, they're 4-1, would be coming home to face Vanderbilt. You're looking at potential to be 5-1. And gosh, some people had Florida winning 3-4 games. So this is a chance for Florida to take another step forward. We appreciate everybody stopping by. For Corey Bender, I am Keith Niebuhr. Take care, everybody.